also traditional Jewish, Christian, or Muslim.
Atheist and agnostic as well.
Hi, Preston.
Hi, Katie.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. Are you ready for another episode of the
Holy
Watermelon Podcast?
I am. excited for today's episode.
I'm excited for you to be a part of today's episode. I mean, you're a part of every episode, but...
Right. It's a great thing that we share. So in our previous episode, we talked about how atheists don't worship Satan, which is a ridiculous thing to have other people contradict. But people keep saying that atheists worship Satan.
It's a pretty common thing. If you don't worship God, then you must worship the devil.
Right? It's nonsense.
And with that segue, today we're talking about devil worship.
Yeah, I wanted to start off with the idea of the devil. What is he? Where does he come from? How do we get these ideas?
So you want to talk about who the devil is or what the devil is?
Yeah. The devil appears usually 4 times in English translations of the Hebrew Bible, which is the Old Testament. He naturally shows up a lot more in the New Testament. And the nature of his figure changes a little bit. The word shed refers to evil spirits in Hebrew, and that word is usually translated as devil. And interestingly enough, it's spelt the exact same way in Hebrew because of the lack of vowels as the words shad and showed. Showed meaning spoil, like to destroy or to rob, and shad as in breasts.
Wow.
Right? And that's an important detail we'll come back to in a minute.
Okay. You would think breasts are important.
I mean, at some point in every human's life, they are either important or sought after.
Fair.
All right. And the other word that is usually translated as devil in the Hebrew Bible is sair, which is actually a word used to refer to satyrs or to goat idols, or even sometimes broadly just goats. And so this, these two ideas, the sair, the satyr, and the breasts, inform a lot of the typical idea of how we display the devil in art. Especially the Baphomet statue, which is popular because of some other groups we'll talk about later in this episode. It's usually a goat man with breasts.
Da, da, da. I'm just picturing like the muscular man breasts.
With the firm, manly pecs rather than the boobs.
Yeah.
There are both versions of the Baphomet in art, but an awful lot of people prefer boobs.
Oh. I think everyone prefers boobs. Like, I think statistically 100% of the planet likes boobs.
I feel like part of our population isn't terribly interested in boobs, at least in their later life.
Who?
I'm going to go out and say gay men.
Wrong.
Probably
even
less.
Even gay men like boobs. Facts.
All of them?
Yes.
I am perfectly willing to accept that many gay men appreciate boobs. That's a reality for sure. I don't think that you can say that there are no gay men who like boobs or who don't like boobs.
For a gay man who doesn't like boobs, send me an email.
Let's keep the conversation going. Discord is a great place.
Hitting conversation going. I stand by what I said. 100% of the population likes boobs. Carry on.
So the interesting thing about this, the way we see the devil in Scripture, is that it's informed from other traditions outside of Israel. In fact, the way that we see the devil in the more common Judeo-Christian cosmology seems to be informed a lot by Zoroastrianism, where there's a more almost equal duality of good versus evil in the gods of Zoroastrianism, which is mostly pretty strongly monotheistic, but isn't so strongly monotheistic when you dig deeper.
Oh, like all of them.
Yeah, all theological models have layers.
Like ogres and onions.
Exactly. So the devil as an idea is kind of an interesting one, and it's associated with idol worship in Old Israel. And oddly enough, with goats for some reason. Out of all of the idols that exist, the devil's specifically tied to the goat.
I did some reading on why the goat for Baphomet, and it's a pagan god.
Yes.
Yeah. Is where that imagery was made popular in the early 1900s. In the context of Satanism, I think it was some popular story, and they used this pagan god that was a goat, and brought it into devil worship or Satan worship.
Especially for Christianity, popping up in its base of power, if you will. The idea of satyrs is an idea that Christians were super uncomfortable with, because as opposed to the Baphomet of boobs, as we've described, satyrs are all about having an extra huge penis, and they're super sexually aggressive almost all the time.
And that comes from Greek and Roman mythology.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a new...
But it's a part of the environment in which Christianity grew up.
Yeah, so it was easy to adopt.
And villainize.
Yeah.
It's weird that individual satyrs are pretty often antagonists in the stories of Greek and Roman mythology. But to say that they're the ultimate bad guy of the stories, that's a Christian twist.
Goats are so cute.
They're less cute when they're half man with a huge penis.
Speak for yourself, Preston.
All right. So moving on to what looks to me like a actually totally separate idea is Satan. And it's hard to see Satan and the devil as identical things. There's an awful lot of overlap in the values that we have dumped onto these ideas. Mm-hmm. But the title Satan is used in the Hebrew Bible 27 times. It shows up a lot more than that in the Christian New Testament. And broadly in the New Testament, they are meant to be understood to be the same thing, or at least that's the way most people who look at it. Yeah. It's typically understood that they're meant to be the same figure. In the Hebrew Bible, Satan is a title, not a name, but a title. And it denotes an adversary or an accuser. So the way it's meant to be understood when you read the Hebrew Bible, the Christian Old Testament, Satan is a member of the heavenly court who stands to accuse each and every man and woman for the ways that they have transgressed the law. That God is the judge in that heaven, and that there is... Why can't I think of the more common poetic term for a defense attorney?
Prosecutor?
No, the prosecutor is Satan.
Satan. Defendant?
The defendant is you and me. Oh, it bugs me that I've lost this word, and I clearly should have written it down.
The barrister.
I don't know why this word is blanking me. It'll come to me when we're done recording. That's the way it goes anyway. But Satan is a member of the court of heaven who stands to accuse us of breaking the law. It's his job to keep track of that. And that's a little bit different feeling than we get from the New Testament Satan, where he's the one who encourages us to break the law. And Do it. It's interesting to see that change of flavor.
Yeah.
And so there's an awful lot of theological exploration of this idea that he is doing both jobs. The two halves of that biblical split, the Hebrew Bible versus the Christian Bible, they have different views. They're not necessarily contradictory.
So that he encourages you to do bad things and then later he judges you for them.
Well, he's not the judge. He's the prosecutor.
Accuses you of them later.
Yeah.
Remember that thing you did that I encouraged you to do? Yeah. Guilty.
Right. I mean, ultimately, we are all responsible for our own actions. We can't say the devil made me do it, because that's nonsense. We choose what we do, though we are also a product of our environments, the various, very different forces that act on us, but we get to make our own choices.
Wow. A little pep talk there.
Yeah. Don't be a dick. I'm going to find a way to work that phrase into most of our episodes, I think.
Good. It should be like an Easter egg.
Right? Maybe we'll put it on a t-shirt or a hat.
Yes. It is on my list of merch to make.
And with that note, check out our merch.
We have just launched our Spreadshirt store. So if you want some sweet holy watermelon merch, check us out. Our link will be on our social media.
Yeah, just check out our link tree and get connected to that and our Discord server where we have great conversations.
Like about whether gay men like boobs or not.
Right? Let us know. Anyway, let's get back onto the train tracks that we have derailed
These devil train tracks. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So
Lucifer
is a great one. I feel very certain that somebody out in podcast land is happy to argue with me on this one. And let's just start with, if you want to argue with me on this one, you're wrong.
Okay. That's the tolerance we like here.
I'm not saying I won't discuss it with you, but what I'm about to share with you is widely agreed upon by the vast majority of scholars in the field. Lucifer is not the name of the devil. It is not Satan's name.
I believe that. Yeah, and he's like Lucifer's hardly mentioned in the Bible, if I'm not mistaken.
So the name doesn't show up very much in the Bible at all.
Yeah.
And I'm going to distract myself just a little bit. There's so many things in popular culture that love to make the name of the devil Lucifer Morningstar.
Is it the hit show Lucifer?
That's one of many cases. There are so many shows
where
that do this.
The main character is Lucifer Morningstar.
And one, that's a lazy tautology. But
Said it.
But second, that's not his name. The one time that we see Lucifer in the average English translation of the Bible, Lucifer it doesn't show up in the Hebrew. It doesn't show up in the Greek. It is added by the Latin translation, replacing the Hebrew name Hallel, which I said name, that's still the wrong word. It's a title. And Hallel means shining and refers to a shining one. Specifically in the context we have it, it's meant to refer to the title of the king of Babylon as referring to the morning star, that he's this bright god for the king. The one time we have the name Lucifer in the Hebrew Bible, it's not talking about the devil. It's Isaiah, the prophet, addressing the king of Babylon, calling him out for being such a powerful being who has fallen so far from grace by doing such great wickedness against Israel. Not talking to Satan.
So it does have a reference to a person who did bad things, though.
Well, it's the king of Babylon, yeah.
Yeah, but...
And there are an awful lot of scholars who want to say that for this brief passage where Isaiah is using this title of Lucifer, that he's changed his subject, that he's stopped talking to the king of Babylon. The context doesn't make that statement make any sense. Yeah. but the name Lucifer has stuck in popular culture as the name of the devil.
I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I'd be interested to know why it got applied to the name of the devil.
Yeah, so I am also interested and curious to figure that out, and so far I haven't found an answer.
Interesting.
What's interesting to me is that the title of Morning Star is applied to Jesus several times in the New Testament.
Satan.
And Lucifer being a title that means light bringer, as it refers to the morning star. That
I mean, it's quite a positive title.
it is a positive title. And so it makes sense that it applies to Jesus. And so, of course, the rationale behind it being applied to Lucifer is that he was one of the great angels before he rebelled. And so it's one of those names that shows how far he has fallen. But
Is that just fanfic, though? Because there's no stories about Lucifer. It's just Bible fanfic.
it looks an awful lot like fanfic
Okay.
from a biblical perspective.
Just like the Assumption of Mary. That's
Yeah.
Bible fanfic, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should do an episode on that.
There's an awful lot of biblical fanfic out there.
Yep. And then
It's-
I forced you to put this one in. I just wrote the numbers and you did the research. So 666, number of the beast.
Yeah, so it's a number that shows up in Revelation 18:13. The number of the beast is a human number, and that number is 666. Some translations of the Bible use slightly better language than that, saying that it's not a human number, as Iron Maiden says, but is the number of a man. A lot of translations prefer that wording. And the man, according to almost all scholars on the subject, is Emperor Nero.
Yeah.
There was, according to scholarship on the subject, an awful lot of people were really worried about Emperor Nero coming back from the dead to wreak even greater havoc than he had previously. And with the style of apocalyptic literature that is super obvious in the Revelation of John, the story is that Israel will overcome even when Nero comes back. Now, whether John was genuinely himself worried that Emperor Nero himself would come back or somebody much like him, we can't say with any certainty.
So also nothing really to do with Satan or the devil. We just lump it in there as an evil thing.
Yeah, it's a connected idea. All four of these numbers and titles are connected ideas in the way that we've associated them over the centuries, but they are all individual, distinct things. What's interesting is that the number 666, and many Greek manuscripts actually spell it out as 666. There are a few that use the numeral letters, and it's not numeral numbers, they're numeral letters.
Like Roman numerals, yeah.
But smarter than Roman numerals.
Okay.
So Latin is super dumb that 5 is a V and 1 is an I. And there's no, you couldn't look at the alphabet and figure out why those letters were chosen to be those numbers. And you have to add them up in a way that makes doing math really hard.
Yeah.
Greek and Hebrew and probably other languages did this really sensible thing where the first 9 letters are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The next 9 letters are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. And then the next 9 letters, 100, 200, 300, so on. So there are some Greek manuscripts that spell out 666. There are some that use the numerals to it looks like 666 if you want to translate it accurately into English, but they're not 3 6s.
Yeah, it's these letters.
June 6, 2006, a bunch of people were worried about it for some reason because it was 666. It was dumb because it wasn't 666, which was the number that we're looking for. What's interesting, though, is there are also manuscripts in Greek, for some reason, that instead of being 666, they're 616. And the odd thing about that is that it doesn't contradict the popular scholarly interpretation of it applying to Emperor Nero. It instead applies one to the Greek spelling of Emperor Nero and one to the Latin spelling of Emperor Nero.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's super weird. So, and it's a matter of adding up the value of the letters that spell up the name to get this number 666.
Oh, okay.
Because John had to write in code, because he was in exile when he wrote it. He needed this thing to be published, but anything that he's writing is getting read by his guards before it goes anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea there.
So we should be just as worried about the number 616 as 666, which is not at all.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm really glad you finished it off with that last qualifier. Otherwise,
I just know some people
I would have added it.
I know some people make a big deal about 666.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some people are super stressed out about it. Like if that's the number on your bill, they'll make sure that they change something.
Like 667.
Yeah.
Fun fact, our car payment is $667 a month.
Nice.
And that's how I remember it.
That's fair.
Is by the number of the beast.
Because it's not quite there.
Well, I just know it's near 666 and I can make financial decisions based on that. Oh.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are really worried about the number, and that association isn't enough to make me feel like that fear is validated. But I mean,
especially once it's meant for Nero and not some supernatural beastie.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they think he's coming back from the dead like a zombie, but
or that somebody like Emperor Nero is going to come in the future. Either or, it's not having a number on a piece of paper being a danger.
I mean, chances are the people who believe in the 666 would support someone who looked like a Nero with the way things are going.
There's way too much evidence to support that supposition.
All right, so let's get into Satanism.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Now that we've talked about devils.
Yeah, there's a couple big groups that are both formed and named to deliberately antagonize Christians that have taken up that mantle of Satanism.
Do they antagonize Christians? Like, there's nothing in their official statements that say they exist too.
I'm going to show a couple of points to you as we go through. Generally, the statement and the media presence of saying, I worship Satan, is to one degree or another. Sometimes it's really not an aggressive antagonism, and sometimes it has been against Christians or Christianity in general, or sometimes just against the idea that there's a Christian supremacy in the state, which is hard to deny in North America. And depending on where you are in South America, it's actually a problem too that's quite visible.
Is there anything you want to share with the class before we start talking about Satanism, Preston?
There was a time when I was a Satanist. And that's not the life I live now, but it was part of who I was for a little while when I was in junior high, and your identity is super flexible and constantly changing.
I mean, it was still valid.
Mm-hmm. I showed up in all black to my younger brother's Christian baptism when I was in junior high. I can't even picture that. It wasn't that intense. It wasn't like super goth. I just happened to have black pants and a black t-shirt. We're not going too crazy here.
But still, you're a pretty vibrant guy.
Right?
So that surprises me.
I didn't do the eye makeup and dye my hair darker.
Didn't have an inverted cross on your forehead. Nah. Okay.
It wasn't really even a long time thing. But it was a few months where I was like, yeah, no, it makes perfect sense that, let's follow the first great philosopher. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. That some of the positions of these groups are interesting and worth exploring, which is part of why we're doing an episode. So first I want to talk about the Church of Satan. I don't want to keep saying for each group, this is not the group I belong to, because I didn't belong to any group at all.
Yes, and that's where, honestly, this episode was hard, is because, there's this Church of Satan we're going to talk about, And then there's the Satanic Temple. And then you can just actually be like a Satanist.
Yeah.
Just like, I mean, I guess you can be a Christian without prescribing to any particular denomination.
Yeah.
And it's a spectrum. So everything's a spectrum. So the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple are actually quite different.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see just from these two that if you're involved in any sort of organized Satanism, there's two vastly different groups, and then anything and everything in between, including satanic ritual killings, which we'll get to.
All right. So the Church of Satan was founded in San Francisco in 1966. Not very old.
No.
I like that they picked 66 to start this.
Do you think he just like sat on it for a little bit?
You know what? A little piece of me thinks he might have.
It's not time yet.
Was it June of 66?
I don't know.
A little piece of me now hopes it was June 6, 66, but I don't know that that's the case.
File it today. It has to be filed today.
It was started by a fella named Anton LaVey. He's an interesting fella.
He's a weird duck.
Yeah, he is. And we don't really have the time to get into all of his baggage. But he wrote the Satanic Bible. He didn't publish it until after the church had been around for a few years. And it is their official text.
No, I think I have this in our notes later, but LaVey believed in magic. So we're going to get into their beliefs a little more. So that's one big difference between the Church of Satan, which we're talking about now, and the Satanic Temple, which we're talking about later, is that the Church of Satan strongly believes in magic and the use of magic, whereas the Satanic Temple is more humanist and doesn't believe in those superstitious things. So if you're wondering how weird this guy is, he believes in magic.
Yeah, they're into magic, but they do not at all subscribe to the familiar ideas of what the devil is.
And that really subscribed me. That really surprised me. I knew a little bit about Satanism, but the fact that none of these Satanists generally do not believe in Satan.
I don't know if it's fair to say generally. The bigger groups, that is absolutely the case.
Satan,
yeah. It's interesting that though they use this title, Satanist, they do not worship Satan.
And they actively discourage the worship of Satan as a deity. So yeah, there it is in my notes. So the Church of Satan believes in magic or black magic, but not in a higher power. So it is both supernatural but atheistic, which is that was kind of weird for a moment for me to wrap my head around. As a secular humanist, I was like, how can you believe in both the how can you believe in the supernatural and not believe in God?
Well, see, we've talked about a few religions where there's this spiritual cosmology without
a deity,
any specific theology or deity. Yeah, like even Buddhism is pretty fuzzy in the God department.
Mm-hmm. This is a quote I pulled. LaVey taught that his infernal majesty was a symbol of humanistic values such as self-assertion, rebellion against unjust authority, vital existence, and undefiled wisdom. So Satan is really just like a figurehead or a metaphor.
Yeah, for the Church of Satan, he's definitely more of a metaphoric symbol than a personal presence.
Yeah.
But a positive one, which feels weird in a pretty Christocentric society.
Yes, and there's going to be a lot of numbers coming up. I'm going to throw a whole bunch of numbers at you guys.
But we like numbers.
I love numbers, but the Church of Satan has their own set of numbers, and then the Satanic Temple has a different set of numbers.
Yes.
So a nice summary of the Church of Satan, the 9 satanic statements. So Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. Satan represents vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. I'm excited for you to unpack all these. Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who because of his divine, spiritual, and intellectual development has become the most vicious animal of all. Satan represents all of the so-called sins as they all lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. And Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had as he has kept it in business all these years. So what do you think of all that, Preston?
Well, I mean, that's 9 separate things to unpack.
I mean,
some of them are deliberately and specifically meant to contradict teachings of the church, teaching straight out of the Bible. Others are less targeted, but still that vein of thought where it's meant to be in opposition to all of the fairly oppressive teachings of the church over the centuries.
I mean, I was going to say these aren't all necessarily negative. I think we're just so used to these restrictive religions where that you have to make some sort of personal sacrifice to be part of it. And this doesn't have any level of personal sacrifice.
No, none at all. This is all about almost self-deification. That you shouldn't be worshiping Lucifer at all, according to these thoughts, but that you kind of put yourself up on the pedestal, and if somebody's going to hurt you, they have wronged God and you will hurt them.
Yeah, the one that represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. That one's that's probably the worst one on the 9, but
it's not a great way to be a neighbor.
No. Let's replace that with don't be a dick and you have a pretty solid 9.
Right? But these are just the satanic statements. We also have rules, which feel a little bit like the 10 Commandments, but this time there's 11 of them. I mean, if we want to explore the 10 Commandments, even within the Decalogue, there's more than 10. All right, so the 11 satanic rules of the earth. First, do not give opinions or advice unless you are asked.
Love it.
Right? That's actually a pretty good rule to live by.
I think it's a good rule to live by.
Do not tell your troubles to others unless you are sure they want to hear them.
Also kind of into that
one.
Right?
Yeah, I'm into that. That's nice. When in another's lair, show him respect or else do not go there.
Get out of my house.
The word lair feels weird, but also good rule.
Yes, the sentiment is there. The wording, yeah, okay.
Every time I see the word lair in these writings, it's just like, you are affecting a feeling, and it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't slide smoothly, but I get it.
You're making this for a certain type of person.
Absolutely. If a guest in your lair annoys you, treat him cruelly and without mercy.
I'm not.
I'm less on board. I mean,
that one makes less sense. I'm pretty sure you can just ask them to leave.
Or, hey, don't do that annoying thing.
Don't do that.
This isn't a translation issue. Anton LaVey wrote this in English. If somebody is annoying you, treat them without mercy. Not a great way to be a neighbor.
No, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. I would have been really mean to a lot of people if that was what I lived by.
Here's another good one, though. Do not make sexual advances unless you are given the mating signal.
Love it. How come Christianity doesn't have that?
They kind of do, but honestly not in such a well-worded way.
Yeah.
It's great. The wording, again, is a little bit weird. We don't talk about mating signals. I mean, it's not that we don't have them. It's just we don't call them that.
We call it flirting.
But it's a good rule. It's such a good rule.
Great rule.
Do not take that which does not belong to you unless it is a burden to the other person and he cries out to be relieved. Good rule.
Love it.
Like, so far, like, we're halfway through this list. We've only found one that's objectionable. And certainly there's going to be people arguing with us on how objectionable it is, and that's fine. Just, whatever. But don't take what's not yours. That's good.
I love it. And lighten the load if you can lighten a load.
Yeah, it's great.
Love it.
And I like how it's tied into one statement, even though there's a negative and a positive there.
Yep.
Next, acknowledge the power of magic if you have employed it successfully to obtain your desires. If you deny the power of magic after having called upon it with success, you will lose all you have obtained. So, just like in the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, we have one of the many commandments that actually has a promise attached to it. This is the one that we have where you must acknowledge the presence of magic. And if you've used it and deny its power, then you'll be punished for it. Within a self-consistent thing, we're still solid. But magic?
I mean, is it weirder than what any other religion asks us to believe?
As its own thing? No. If you've successfully used magic, acknowledge that you've successfully used magic. I got it.
Cool.
All right. Do not complain about anything to which you need not subject yourself.
Yes. Yes. I was just having this conversation the other day. We have a few people in our lives where they'll like answer their text and they'll be like, it's this person. I don't want to text them. And then they text them. I'm like, you don't have to answer that text. You don't have to text someone.
Yeah, don't volunteer for suffering and then complain about it.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
Love it.
And that's how I understand that commandment. Or, well, I guess it's not a commandment. It's rules of living on the earth.
Rules of the earth.
The next one, another really good one. And here we have some really strong non-contradictions with the teachings of Jesus. The rule is, do not harm little children.
I know
That's strong and solid.
I know a few groups that could use that rule.
Right? Some churches even.
That's what I was getting at.
It's really hard to naysay some of these, These are good rules.
Why would you want to naysay them? I don't think there's anything wrong with Satanism. Do you?
So far, I haven't seen anything that's outright objectionable.
Okay.
Well, okay, that's not true. There was a couple things. Mostly, it's a good way to live. Next, do not kill non-human animals unless you are attacked or for your food. Makes sense. Don't go around stomping on things that don't mean you any harm. Don't go torturing animals for no reason. We've got enough people doing that. It's a problem. Kill animals for your food or your protection makes good sense to me.
Yep.
When walking in open territory, bother no one. If someone bothers you, ask him to stop. If he does not stop, destroy him.
So that went from like 0 to 110. So that escalated incredibly quickly. But the first half is not bad.
Right?
I like the first half. I mean, we've lived in sketchy enough neighborhoods to know that you just keep yourself to yourself and keep your head down and don't bother people and you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. That being said, I think there are times people should intervene. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, the first part of that is a good rule.
Honestly, the whole thing looks pretty solid if you want to live the biblical life. When you're not there yet in your Bible reading, but when Israel leaves Egypt and wanders around in the wilderness for 40 years and makes their home in the promised land, that's exactly the way they made their home. Was they wandered in peace. They promised peace to anybody that they came across. And when the people who had already set up their homes there said, hey, we don't want you, and threatened to kill them, then Israel fought back and destroyed them.
Oh, lovely.
So this is the way we see the existence in the Bible.
So Satanists are Christians / anti-Christians.
That's pretty fair.
Thanks.
I'd say, well, we didn't actually explore the title of Antichrist.
I know. I
in our list of
realized that
things.
right now. But
And depending on who you ask, there are a good handful of different definitions for Antichrist. Some people say it doesn't count as the Antichrist if he's not the literal physical embodied spawn of Satan, which that's a really extreme position to hold to. I don't want to call it a weird position, but it's an extreme one to say there's just the one thing that could ever be. So where we have this title showing up in our oldest literature is right in the New Testament. And an Antichrist is literally any person who denies that Jesus rose from the dead. Which we have an Antichrist in this room.
oh no, where? It's me.
And so realistically and fairly, an Antichrist, depending on who you talk to, can be anywhere in between those two extremes.
Wow. Everything from the literal spawn of Satan to Katie.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm gonna make a graphic. I'm gonna be all cheery and like thumbs up, and then there'll be like the little literal like Voldemort abortion on the other side. Choose your Antichrist. There's a meme in here. I need to. There's a meme.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Yeah. And so those were the rules.
Those are the beliefs of the Church of Satan, with a little digression in there.
Yeah.
So what does it look like if you're a practicing Church of Satanist?
Well, out on the streets, most Satanists wouldn't look terribly out of place among any other group of professionals you'd see, I think. But there's Satanist weddings, funerals, even baptisms. Sometimes you hear the word anti-baptism thrown around.
Unbaptism is popular in Temple of Satan.
Yes.
Or the Satanic
The
Temple.
Satanic Temple.
Yes. Whereas you can get a Satanist baptism through the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
There is a ranking system in the Church of Satan.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just your regular church. Like, it would be very foreign to say your average evangelical Christian, and not just because it's Satan, but it's actually modeled after the old mystery schools where you've got sets of degrees that you progress through. And to be fair, the Church of Satan, very few people go up through all the degrees, but you'll have a few people who will go up to second or third. It's kind of interesting that way.
Yeah, so it starts as a registered member. Anyone can be a registered member. You can go on to churchofsatan.com right now and register, and you'd be a registered member of the Church of Satan. And then to get your first degree, you become an active member, and that's basically just showing your interest in the community building of the Church of Satan, that you want to be involved and not just to have it on paper that you're a member of the Church of Satan. The second degree is witch or warlock. Third degree is priest or priestess. Fourth degree is magister or magistra. And fifth degree is maga or magus. On their website, and I didn't do a ton of digging, it basically said to get into they don't tell you how to get into the upper degrees. You'll be approached.
Yeah, they're
I'm sure if I did
invitational
some digging,
progression.
I could find what those ranks are. It's on Reddit for sure.
There's a very real chance, having not looked into it at all, specifically myself, that once you've gotten to the point where somebody's comfortable inviting you up to these higher degrees, each individually, of course, you're probably not the kind of person who would decide to reveal those secrets.
I mean, there's always people who leave, though. That's where I get all of my internal intel.
And the cultier your group is, for sure, you're going to have people leaving. But based on the things we outlined in our cults episode, as much as Anton LaVey kind of set up a slightly authoritarian system, it's really not setting off my cult alarm bells.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about both this and the Satanic Temple is, you know, in the news, you'll hear about satanic cults. And these are not cults at all in in the danger cult zone.
Right.
You might call them a cult in terms of a small upstart religion, but definitely not danger cult. These are full, fleshed out, regular old religions.
With tax exempt status.
With tax
most
exempt
cases.
status. One, I guess controversial point, something if you've seen The Exorcist at all, is the Black Mass. And so the Church of Satan performs Black Mass, as does the Satanic Temple, which is basically this blasphemous version of a Catholic Mass. The vestments are all black, hence Black Mass, and the altar is the back of a naked woman.
Kind of sexy.
Wow, Preston. Is that why teenage Preston was a Satanist?
No, not at all. Though it certainly wouldn't have hurt. It probably would have encouraged me to stick with it a little longer, maybe.
And then they do things with the sacrament and whatever.
For sure. So in contrast with that, we have the Satanic Temple.
It's a baby.
Right? It's pretty new. It's been around for about 8 years. It was founded in Salem, Massachusetts in 2013. The group was co-founded by Lucian Greaves and Malcolm Jerry. And kind of like Moses and his brother Aaron, one of them was the spokesperson. That was Malcolm Jerry. So it's... And it is pretty new. And the little parallel is kind of interesting to me. Because, things.
I actually like, I mean, of the two, like if I had to pick, I'd pick the Satanic Temple. It just seems like more modern, and they appear to be more active than the Church of Satan, and they're doing some cool stuff in the community.
The Satanic Temple is really involved in helping secularize the state. That's one of their main drives.
Yeah, and this is why we picked to do Satanism. I think a little bit after our parody religions is that part of their job is to, if Christianity is getting certain privileges, that they're making sure that they get certain those privileges as well, as a commentary on religion in the United States. So kind of like the flying spaghetti monster, that if you can teach creationism in science class, you can teach flying spaghetti monsterism in class. And one of their beliefs is that all churches should be taxed. And that's something that they advocate for.
But in the meantime, since churches get to be tax exempt, they're taking full advantage of all of the benefits of being a church.
Absolutely. But I think that's where people go, and we'll get to satanic panic in a little bit, but oh my goodness, the Church of Satan, how can they be tax exempt? It's, well, turn around and look at literally any other group, and they're not actually doing anything bad.
Right. It's important to note that the Satanic Temple also does not claim to worship Satan. They do discourage that, though. As we talked about earlier on in our podcast in history, go back to our early episodes, when we define what is a god and what is worship, that's pretty nebulous, and it does kind of look like both of these groups do kind of worship Satan, but it's as true as saying Catholics worship saints.
I think where they avoid that... Yeah, so the Satanic Temple, Satan is a metaphor, a symbol for the eternal rebel. So I see what you're saying, Preston, but I think...
Satanic Temple is even less theist.
Oh, yeah, they're like actually, they believe in, this is a quote, they believe in exercising reasonable agnosticism in all things, that religion should be divorced from superstition. Superstition, I said that weird. I think... The reason that they both say that, and this is just an opinion piece, so jump in, but there's this idea that, we talked Satan is evil, but I don't...
From the Christian New Testament perspective.
Yeah, but Satanists aren't evil. But then part of me goes, then why did you pick Satan as your rep?
It's to specifically antagonize Christians, whether to a great degree or a minor degree. There is that spirit of antagonism there.
You know, I was talking to someone, they're like, oh, this person's evil, they're a devil worshiper. And I'm like, Satan.
Usually not.
Yeah, usually not. So that's just like, and chances are they're not a devil worshiper.
Right.
If you're a Satanist, you're not actually a devil worshiper.
Right.
So it is an interesting. So I feel like, they just picked the name to piss off the majority.
Christians.
Yeah.
And it works.
Are you grumpy?
No. I think these groups are fascinating, and in particular, the Satanic Temple does great work. We'll look at a few points here later on.
Can I read the 7 tenets?
Do it.
Yes. So they have 7 tenets. So we had the 9, and then we had the 11, and now we have 7. So number 1 should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason.
I can't complain about that.
Nope. Number 2, the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions.
Absolutely. We've got an awful lot of people who, especially in the last year, have been shouting for the rule of law, completely ignoring the need for actual justice.
Yes, law
That's a
and justice
problem.
are 2 different things, and the law, it doesn't always make sense.
Right? An awful lot of terrible things have been not just legal, but enforced by law. And an awful lot of righteous things have been banned by law.
Yeah.
So they are different, and a lot of people seem to have a lot of trouble with that.
Mm-hmm. Number 3, one's body is inviolable. I don't know. Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Inviolable. Subject to one's own will alone. So body autonomy.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I like it.
I just looked up the umbrella of protection like yesterday,
Yeah.
and I didn't like it, but I like this. The number 4, the freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forgo one's own.
Yeah.
Is that not what I say basically every episode?
Don't be a dick.
As long as you're not hurting anyone else, go hard.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5, belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs.
Right?
Oh,
We got way too
love
many people
that.
doing that.
Too many. I love that. Am I a Satanist?
I don't know. Are you? You tell me. I don't like telling other people a thing that they are when they may not agree.
Kind of jives with me.
Right?
Number 6, people are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused.
Absolutely agree.
And number 7, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word.
Absolutely.
I have no problems with these. These are
Right.
less weird than LaVey's.
Right?
Destroy them.
Yeah. Our fellas in the Satanic Temple seem to be a lot, I don't want to say less rage motivated, even though that's what was going to come out of my mouth, because there's definitely a perfectly reasonable anger against a very prejudiced system in place.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I like all of those. I have
Yeah.
no problems with that sense of beliefs, and it makes satanic panic even funnier. And actually, when I was researching this episode, I found an article, I think it was the CBC, and it was like, new satanic cult makes its way to Canada. And it was this Satanic Temple because it's fairly new. Like I had just met my husband in 2013. Like we were just becoming friends in 2013. So this is a very new religion, and it just made me giggle that it was like on the CBC as this scary thing. And then you read this and you're like, oh, there's nothing to disagree with.
Right?
And if you can disagree with it, please leave a note on our Discord because I really want to know what you disagree with,
Yeah.
because those all seem super reasonable to me.
So far, it's great. So, kind of like the flying spaghetti monster, as Katie mentioned, it's important for the Satanic Temple to remind legislators that religious freedoms need to be available to everyone. That's no matter what it is you believe, that we need to have both freedom of religion and freedom from religion.
Yep.
Secularism is hugely important, as we had talked about in our previous episode.
Mm-hmm. Rituals that they do, Black Mass, as I mentioned prior. This is straight from their website. It's a celebration of blasphemy, which can be expression of personal liberty and freedom. They have the unbaptism, which I actually really like. This is different than the satanic baptism of the Church of Satan. This is where if you were baptized as a child, you can renounce that baptism in a ceremony, which I think is kind of cool because I know a lot of people that were baptized as babies and now they're like, what?
Well, and I really appreciate that it's about going back on a thing that was done to you without your consent.
I mean, I think that goes back to the tenet of your bodily autonomy.
Absolutely.
They have a destruction ritual where participants destroy an object they own that symbolizes a source of pain in their lives.
Hugely
Also,
cathartic.
I was going to say also very healthy. And they have a defiance ritual. So a pledge to challenge the status quo in a way that is personally meaningful.
I don't see an issue with that.
I don't either.
I mean, I recognize that there is room for problems there, but broadly, generically, I bet you that doesn't come up very often.
I mean, if you pair the defiance ritual with the 7 tenets,
then you're probably going to be fine.
hard to pick something that would be
And
harmful.
realistically, you'd be doing this with a group, and somebody's going to say, hey, don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Tenet 8. Don't be a dick.
No, I think that was already there. We're adding our words to... You know, there's nothing wrong with restating your thing in rules.
That's
like, what's
fair.
the second rule of Fight Club?
Don't be a dick.
It's the same rule as rule number 1.
Is it? I've never seen Fight Club.
We might need to fix that.
I think this came up in a previous episode. I didn't know what John Wick was, but I feel like people are going to start realizing how little TV I watch.
So on our Discord, somebody called me out on that. And like, are they really that similar? To be fair, he said that he hadn't seen one of the films as well. And my comparison wasn't a strong comparison, but I stand by it that there is some parallels between the two.
Okay.
So one thing that I think is great and will always be a wonderful highlight for me in the Satanic Temple organization's history is the Pink Mass of 2013. They were still brand new at this
Little
point.
babies.
And this is an example of some deliberate antagonism. Not that it's not deserved. In this case, it's very deserved.
But it is an act of deliberate antagonism.
So the Westboro Baptist Church,
Blech.
we've talked about them in passing a little bit, more in private than we have on the podcast. They are a very aggressive evangelical pain in the ass.
Man, like, if you think Satanists are bad, just look at the Westboro Baptist Church. Because Satanists are saints. Satanists. Compared to the Westboro Baptist Church. Thank you for laughing at that really bad pun.
It's not great, but I love it. So anyway, the Westboro Baptist Church had decided that they were going to picket the funerals of the victims of the Boston Marathon bombing. If anyone can defend that choice, I'd like to hear it. I'm not going to love your argument, but I'm willing to hear it.
I really want to get, oh my goodness, I forget her first name, but the Phelps lady that left. I really want her on the podcast.
Sure. All right. So the Westboro Baptist Church wanted to picket the funerals of the victims of the bombing. Nonsense. So the Satanist Temple held a meeting over Katherine Johnson's grave. Katherine Johnson is the mother of the Westboro Baptist Church's founder. Church has a living founder. His mom is dead. They decided to have a meeting on her grave because of their decision to picket the funerals of the bombing victims. And the way they decided to have this meeting is just truly deliberately antagonistic.
I love it. There's nothing I don't like about this.
Westboro Baptist Church, famously anti-gay. So they made sure to have gay couple kiss on her grave. Directly over it. No ambiguity here. That's just, hey, we're here to piss you off.
Yes, this next part, though.
But then the leader of the organization decided to rub his junk on her headstone.
Yes.
But not just that. He didn't just rub his junk on her headstone. He rubbed his junk on her headstone and cast a spell to change her sexual orientation post-mortem.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Especially because they don't believe in magic. Like, he was just doing it to troll. All of it.
Yeah.
Love it.
The whole thing is, everything's a spectrum. Not all Satanists are seriously, constantly antagonistic. This event is a really great example of just how antagonistic they can be sometimes. And in this case, not only do I find it hugely entertaining, but it's not like it's not deserved.
Yeah.
The people that they're antagonizing asked for this kind of publicity and behavior.
And I mean, even the, oh my goodness, my brain just stopped working. Even, their political work is arguably deliberately antagonistic, but with good reason. Right? Mm-hmm. Even if they don't ensure religious equality for themselves as a small kind of weird group, as long as, they're working to ensure religious equality for all. So whether that's, Sikhs or Muslims or Jewish people in America and Canada, if they can, work towards it for themselves, that guarantees that everyone has it too. And I think that's important.
And also, as we talked about secularism, they want to reduce the anti-atheist prejudice that exists all over North America.
Yeah.
And it's so weird how much anti-atheist prejudice there is, considering how many atheists there are here.
But I think, and this is last episode, but I was really quiet about my atheism for a long time because I didn't want people to be like, oh, or like have to defend it. So it's just easier to not say anything and let people assume what they want to assume. And
right.
If you're a Christian, chances are you assume that nice white girl is probably a Christian too, even though I'm not. And I remember straight up, I came up at work. This is like years ago when I had a job. One lady was like, I'm Catholic. Another was like, I'm Christian. And I was like, I'm an atheist. And they're like, you would be. And I was like, okay. I don't know what that means, but thank you. And that's when, finally I, if it's going to come up, like I don't shove it down anyone's throats, but if it's going to come up, then yeah, I'll say I'm an atheist.
Well, see, shoving atheism down somebody's throat is a lot different than shoving theism down someone's throat. They're both kind of annoying, let's be real. But you can also be a perfectly reasonable atheist, and I think you are.
Thank you. But I know I've been in situations where people are like, hey, you should check this out. And I'm just like, no, thank you. I'm an atheist.
Some people are a lot more aggressive in their evangelism.
Yeah. But before I used to just like sit there quietly and take it. And now I'm like, if they are so bold to bring it up to me, why am I not so bold to respond with it?
Right.
So anyway, that was a little bit of a digression. You added another small one that I just read about this morning, but I'll let you talk about it.
I think the Temple of Set is a pretty interesting group. They were founded by Michael Aquino in 1975. So the Church of Satan had been around for less than 10 years before this group decided to splinter off.
So it is a satanic cult.
I'm not going to apply the word cult.
Not a danger cult. Sect.
They have sected themselves off of the Church of Satan. And this group actually is more Satanist than the other two that we've covered.
In the stereotypical way we think of Satan.
The Temple of Set they don't worship Satan, they worship Set. But
Okay.
there's a but. The whole idea of this group is that Satan appeared to the founder in a dream and revealed to him that his name is Set. Satan, as we talked at the beginning of the episode, is a title. Set is a name. So most members of the Temple of Set actually don't prefer to be called Satanists. They prefer to be Setianists, which is a little harder to say.
Let's just stick with Satanist Set.
But they actually don't worship him the same way Christians worship Jesus or the Father, because let's admit there's some diversity in Christianity too. They revere him as a leader and as a teacher, as the archetypical philosopher, the free thinker that is opposed to cruel and harsh and demeaning laws. But he is a real figure that exists in reality and is a person to be revered, which is different than the other two groups that we've talked about.
Hit it.
All right. So their sacred text is the Book of Coming Forth by Night. I'll admit I haven't read it. The title is intriguing.
Yes.
And it's going to be on my reading list at some point.
There should be a few books that and Brian, you can get this out, but there should be a few books we tackle together and then do an episode on.
For sure. All right. So the Temple of Set, like the Church of Satan, is into magic. But the Temple of Set doesn't have any prescribed ritual magics. It's more of we acknowledge magic and you can go and use magic. And we can do it as a group sometimes, but we're not going to prescribe rituals to you. Kind of cool, a little bit freeing. Adherents are encouraged to celebrate their own birthdays. Yeah, there are Christians who are opposed to this.
That's true, yeah.
It's kind of interesting to see some contrast there. But there's actually no other holidays that they're required to observe. You should recognize your own birthday. When we talked about worship months back, it's kind of interesting to me that this is the one thing that you're encouraged to observe. And as we look at how birthdays were considered a couple thousand years ago, that the important birthdays were the birthdays of the gods. And so I feel like that's kind of the feeling that's meant to be attached here, is that when you are freed by Satan or Set from the overbearing other religions in the world, as they're thought to be in this group, that you become a god unto yourself.
Well, I think that's the common thread with all of these Satanist groups, is that you should be the center of your world.
Absolutely.
And I mean, as an atheist, I don't disagree. You may as well enjoy this life if you don't know if there's one coming after. Especially some of those really toxic Christianities that are Calvinist comes to mind.
All about hellfire.
Yeah. And really depriving yourself for the promise of something better. And I guess they believe that there is something better, but I'm kind of...
Right.
Let's enjoy this road trip while we're on it. And if there's something better, awesome. And if there's not, then we had a hell of a time.
Right. So the Temple of Set actually does teach that there is an afterlife. Not one for everybody, not a universal afterlife, but if you achieve apotheosis or deification in this life, then you will move on to an afterlife that is yours. Otherwise, there's nothing. You got nothing to worry about. You cease to exist when you die. So that's not so bad. If you want to hope for an afterlife, you're going to do what it takes to have an afterlife worth having. And if you're terrible, then you got nothing anyway, which isn't very different from the Jehovah's Witness program, where the truly righteous will be resurrected and others will simply cease to exist. So not terribly alien, though some aspects of it are not exactly mainstream.
Yeah. So I wrote a couple paragraphs on satanic panic this morning.
I noticed that.
Yeah. I just thought it was a good way to wrap up all of this because I think a lot of the reasons we got requests, not that anyone who asked for it specifically was deeply concerned about Satanists, but I think it comes from truly from the satanic panic and like there are these things to be scared of. My first point is trigger warning. It's not terrible, but I am going to mention some potentially triggering things. So by potentially, or stay with me. So it is also, satanic panic is also known as satanic ritual abuse that originated in the 1980s and still continues to some extent today, but it was really popular in the 1980s. I think this is when like punk and metal were really starting to
define themselves
and were becoming more mainstream. And yeah, people were just worried about their kids. So it's basically, satanic panic is basically that these Satanist groups ritually abuse people physically and sexually. And then I put
surprise. So do some Christians.
I know that I said, but then again, so does the Catholic Church. So this includes everything. And then again, this is just alleged. This is cannibalism, child murder, torture, human sacrifice, etc. And then Katie's commentary. So I'm not saying that this doesn't happen.
But there's not much evidence for it.
But there's not much evidence at all for it. And I have some notes coming down below. It is not, this happens just as much as in Satanism as it does in Christianity. So for any
group that's big enough to have a difference of opinion between people is going to have some issues.
Yeah. Child per capita in Satanism and Christianity, I'm sure, is about the same. That faces some sort of abuse. And because Christianity is bigger, probably a lot more kids get abused that way. Yeah. So don't be looking to Satanists to stir up trouble. There's bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, if you've got community problems, I'm going to bet against Satanists being the root of that problem.
Yeah. And we have to be really careful with satanic panic. And this kind of ties into your note that we're going to get to, but chances are the Satanists you know or have heard of or have met don't actually worship Satan. And satanic panic is often linked with unfounded conspiracy theories. So we have this QAnon with their pedophile cabal. This kind of ties into satanic panic, where we think there's this group of evil people doing these things. And
well, we do know that there's a group of rich people who do terrible things.
Absolutely, but it's not Satanists. And we like hype it up to be this. We're looking where they want us to look, actually.
Yes.
That we're looking where, and it's not the right way to be looking.
It's a bad cup game and we're losing.
Yes.
Shell game is the word I'm looking for. Most people play with cups anyway, though, so I don't feel like I'm wrong, but I had to use words that
we're looking
are
at the
heard
wrong cup in the shell game.
Sure. There you go.
So this is a study, I believe it was from 2018. The National Center on Child Abuse and Neglect conducted a study led by University of California psychologist Gail Goodman. This is a quote from an article, which found that among 12,000 accusations of satanic ritual abuse, there was no evidence for a well-organized integrational satanic cult who sexually molested and tortured children. No evidence. 12,000 cases of child abuse. Alleged child abuse. None of them were linked to any organized Satanist group. Although there was convincing evidence of lone perpetrators or couples who say that they are involved with Satan or use the claim to intimidate victims.
I could see them using Satan as an intimidation tool, but
I think especially if you're involved with a larger Satanist group like the Satanic Temple or the Church of Satan, you're involved in the community and you're not doing weird shit. Like I'm actually thinking of a serial killer case in particular. I don't even know if it's a serial killer case. It was a murder case where some of this stuff happened. But like these are the Jeffrey Dahmers that killed animals and were loners as kids. But if you're actively involved in, the Satanic Temple is a great example where there's a community and you're doing political activity and community outreach, and chances are you're not doing weird shit like this.
Right?
Because you have a reason to not do weird shit like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's basically satanic panic. I had another note more on the mysticism of Satan, but I don't know if that's another digression.
Go for it.
So I was thinking about this in my research and on, how this devil figure comes from Zoroastrianism, and people are so worried about the devil and Satan, but there's so many other dark demon deities. Triple D, dark demon deities in other religions that nobody gives a shit about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like you said, this person I know, oh, they're a devil worshiper, they're evil. I'm like, well, what if they're is it Kali? That's evil.
The goddess of death and destruction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if they're a Kali? You don't care if they're a Kali worshiper. Or I'm not going to look up the Zoroastrian guy's name. Or a Hades worshiper, or I'm sure I know there's others. I just can't think of any other names in other religions. But
Hades is one that I think is actually really fascinating and definitely worth bringing up here.
Because he's also not evil.
There's so much Christian baggage thrown onto Greek mythology and cosmology that we've equated Hades with the devil.
Yeah, in the Sistine Chapels, that devil is Hades.
Right.
Yeah.
In the Disney movies, Hades is definitely the antagonist in the stories. But if you actually go back and read Greek mythology, these stories, Hades is a victim oftentimes and not outright evil. He's the guardian of dead spirits, good and evil.
Yeah.
That equating him with Lucifer, the devil, Satan of Christianity makes no sense at all, especially when Zeus goes around raping people all the time.
Oh,
and he's the
trigger
one
warning.
as well in our Disney animated classic that is so
hero,
beloved. Yeah. Zeus is such a nice guy, and he's meant to resemble what a lot of people like to think of as the god of Christianity.
Yep.
And yet, if you read the stories about him, there is no personality overlap.
I think, my point is, if you didn't know about Christianity, you would never worry about devil worshippers.
Right.
And that's where, we worry about satanic panic. Well, it's only because you have the context of Christianity. If you're raised atheist or somewhere else in the world where Christianity is not as common. Back to last episode, this is where I, question religion as a whole is, if you were never exposed to it, then it wouldn't exist. Right? It's like, why are Catholics the only ones who get exorcisms? We were just talking about our exorcism episode. We're gonna do it this Halloween. So anyway, we'll talk more about that then.
Little tease for the future.
Little long tease for the future, but I guess October is only a few months away. It's
right.
June. But anyway, that was just sort of my last point after doing all this reading, especially because, I get frustrated when people are like, well, Satanists are evil, and they're really not. I'm actually super into it. If I had to pick one.
Which?
A religion.
Yeah, maybe
the
Satanic Temple?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
As a Christian, I'm okay with that.
We're building bridges and bridging gaps with those bridges.
The concept isn't funny. It's just the way it was delivered.
I was going for that. So I guess, but then Satan.
Right?
Okay.
We're going to pretend this is a two-parter from the previous episode to this one. All these people that keep getting accused of being Satan worshipers usually aren't. That's the thesis I want you to take away from this. That anybody, if you ever hear somebody say those Satan worshipers, bet against them being right.
Actually question them a little bit and then
for sure.
leave a note on our Discord and tell us how it went.
Yeah, we definitely are in this for the learning more about your weird communities that you're running into.
Well, and fostering healthy conversations that promote critical thinking.
Exactly.
Well, where can you find us?
Instagram, Facebook. We're on Discord, but you're going to have to get our links from our link tree, which is on Instagram and Facebook. Definitely email us. What's our email address?
holywatermelonpod@gmail.com.
Perfect.
I feel like I was being quizzed.
A little bit.
And if you're liking our episodes, please think about sharing with a friend or family member.
Definitely check out our merch.
Oh, yeah, that's launching.
Yeah. Just this month, we've launched our
Spreadshirt store. And it's 15% off for 2 weeks, guys. So from the launch of this episode to our next episode release, 15% off your purchase. So we'd love to see your pictures sporting our merch.
Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful exploration of
Satan! Hail Satan!
Peace be with you.
By the late Middle Ages, the Christian prophecy had fulfilled itself.
God is near.